Breaking confirmation in the early hours of this morning at approximately 2 o'clock has arrived, coming through channels that most Americans were not watching, in a way that caught even seasoned policy observers by surprise. The approval of $2,000 tariff rebate checks is now official, finalized just moments ago in a development that caught Washington and millions of Americans completely off guard, shifting what had been weeks of speculation, rumor, and cautious hope into confirmed direction and tangible next steps. The White House confirmed a major late-night decision, one that unfolded not in the bright lights of press conferences or through carefully orchestrated media appearances, but in the quiet administrative machinery that actually moves policy from theory into practice, in a move rarely seen, especially for something affecting this many people. The president quietly signed off on a revised structure for the $2,000 tariff rebate checks, turning weeks of speculation, debates behind closed doors, and tentative planning into confirmed direction. There was no big speech prepared for primetime television, no headline celebration designed to capture the news cycle, no long briefing to prepare the public or give journalists time to analyze and contextualize. Instead, the confirmation slipped through internal Treasury notifications, the kind that usually surface only when something has already moved from discussion into action, when the machinery of government has shifted from planning mode into execution mode. And for seniors across the country, especially those living on fixed incomes that haven't kept pace with the rising cost of everything from groceries to utilities to medical care, this may be far more significant than it first appears. Behind the silence, behind the lack of fanfare and political theater, something meaningful shifted. Something that could affect your daily life, your financial security, your ability to breathe a little easier in a world that has felt increasingly expensive and uncertain. Now, before we go any further, before we dive into details and timelines and eligibility, let me slow down and tell you exactly why I'm here and what my commitment to you is. For more than 10 years, I have worked side by side with retirees, widows, caregivers, and couples stepping into life after 60. I have sat at kitchen tables, listened to concerns about money running out before the month ends, helped navigate complex benefit systems, and walked alongside people through some of their most financially vulnerable moments. My passion has always been simple, straightforward, and unwavering, helping seniors protect their savings, feel secure in an uncertain economic landscape, and make financial choices without fear, without pressure, without feeling manipulated or taken advantage of. My goal in this conversation is not to hype anything or rush you into worry. I am not here to create panic or false urgency or to make promises I cannot keep. I am here to walk with you calmly, carefully, and honestly, so you know what changed overnight, why it matters to people in your specific situation, and what you do and do not need to do next. No games, no gimmicks, no pressure tactics, just honest information delivered with respect for your intelligence and your experience. So, let us take this one step at a time together, the way we would if we were sitting across from each other at your kitchen table with a cup of coffee, talking through something important, but doing it without stress or confusion. What happened overnight was not just the confirmation of a dollar amount, not simply a number getting approved in some bureaucratic process. The deeper shift took place behind the scenes in ways that most news coverage will completely miss. Treasury officials reviewed new data, economic models that had been running for weeks, real-world information about how different populations are actually experiencing inflation and economic pressure, and that data confirms something many seniors already feel every time they open the refrigerator and see how much a gallon of milk costs now, every time they refill a prescription and watch the copay climb, every time they pay the electric bill and wonder why it keeps going up, even though they're using less power than before. Fixed incomes simply do not stretch the way they used to. The math has changed, even if the monthly deposit amount has barely budged. The original design of this program focused heavily on workers and middle-income households affected by rising tariffs, the families seeing higher prices on imported goods, the households where both adults work full-time but still struggle to keep up. But the revised documents, the ones that were finalized overnight, revealed a quiet restructuring, a shift in priorities that happened not because of political pressure or media attention, but because the data made it impossible to ignore. One that finally recognizes that older Americans, especially those depending on monthly benefit checks that don't adjust quickly enough to match real-world cost increases, are absorbing inflation faster than most people realize. They're feeling price increases more acutely because they have less room to maneuver, fewer options for increasing income, and budgets that are already trimmed to the bone. This was not announced loudly because it was not political theater designed to win votes or generate applause. It was administrative permission, a green light signaling movement from planning into execution, from theoretical models into practical implementation. And that matters more than you might realize, because things that happen quietly often happen faster than things that get dragged through public political battles. Here is what this really means in language that doesn't require a degree in economics or policy analysis to understand. In simple language, the rebate program is funded through money collected from import tariffs, not through traditional stimulus bills that require extensive congressional debate and negotiation. That distinction is important because tariff revenue already exists. It's already flowing into Treasury coffers every day as goods enter the country. The Treasury does not need an entirely new vote in Congress every time eligibility is adjusted or categories are refined. Once the overall categories are defined and approved at a high level, which has already happened, the machinery can move with less political interference. And last night, that machinery took a meaningful, quiet step forward with seniors moving closer to the front of the review process, not as an afterthought or afterthought category, but as a recognition of vulnerability. But let us stay grounded here, because grounded truth is more valuable than inflated hope. This does not mean instant payments arriving in your account tomorrow morning. It does not mean everyone automatically qualifies regardless of their income or situation, and it does not mean dates are guaranteed or that timelines are set in stone. What it does mean, and this is significant, is that the people with the least financial flexibility, the ones juggling groceries, utilities, and medical costs on the same limited check each month, the ones who can't just pick up extra shifts or find side income to bridge the gap, are finally being considered earlier instead of later. As someone who has sat across countless kitchen tables listening to stories of worry, sacrifice, and quiet strength, stories that rarely make it into policy discussions or economic reports, I can tell you this: acknowledgement matters. Being seen matters. Having your reality recognized by the people making decisions matters more than most policymakers realize. And that is what changed here overnight. So, as we walk through the rest of this together, I want you to feel steady rather than anxious. There is movement, real substantive movement, but there is no need to panic, rush, or chase rumors. We will keep going slowly, clearly, and with care, making sure you understand every piece before we move to the next. When people first hear rebate checks approved, it can sound like something brand new suddenly appeared out of nowhere, like someone waved a magic wand and created money that didn't exist before. But the truth is quieter, more practical, and actually more sustainable than that. This program did not fall out of the sky. It is tied to tariff revenue, meaning money that was already being collected from imported goods entering the country, money that has been flowing into Treasury accounts for years. Instead of creating a brand new stimulus plan with a long political fight, competing proposals, endless amendments, and months of debate, the Treasury has been working within an existing structure, using revenue that's already there and working through administrative channels that don't require starting from scratch. And that matters because when something fits inside a structure that already exists, when you're working with existing legal authority and existing revenue streams, it has fewer hurdles to clear, fewer points where things can get stuck or derailed. There are still reviews, absolutely. There are still safeguards to make sure money goes to the right people and doesn't get wasted or misdirected. But the path is shorter than starting from scratch with entirely new legislation. That is part of why last night's confirmation felt different from typical policy announcements. It was not an announcement designed for applause or political points. It was a signal that the internal approvals had matured enough for the next phase to begin, that all the pieces were in place to actually move forward. Now, I want to say this gently because it is important to understand and manage expectations appropriately. A green light inside the Treasury does not mean checks are being printed tomorrow or that direct deposits will hit your account this week. Think of it more like a train finally moving from the station after sitting on the tracks for a long time. It's moving, definitely moving, but it still has to travel the full route before reaching your destination. First, eligibility models finish running, processing millions of records to determine who qualifies. Then records are matched across different government systems to make sure information is accurate and up to date. Then payment methods get verified to ensure money will reach the right accounts or addresses. Only after those pieces line up, only after everything is confirmed and double-checked, does the actual distribution process begin. And if you are sitting at home wondering, so where do I fit in? Am I included? Will this help me? That is completely normal and completely understandable. My role here is to help you breathe through the uncertainty while giving you the clearest picture possible based on what we actually know. No wild promises, no exaggerated timelines designed to generate excitement, just the truth delivered with care and respect. So why did seniors suddenly move closer to the front of that line? Why did the priority shift to focus on older Americans on fixed incomes? Honestly, not because of politics and not because someone wanted headlines or wanted to appeal to a particular voting bloc. The reason is much simpler and much more human than political calculation. The new reports showed something the numbers could no longer hide, something that became undeniable when analysts looked honestly at the data. Seniors were carrying more pressure than expected, and they were running out of space to adjust, running out of options for adapting to rising costs. Groceries crept higher month after month. Utilities quietly rose with each season. Co-pays nudged upward with each prescription refill. Even small increases, individually manageable, began stacking like bricks on top of one another until the weight became crushing. And while working families sometimes have the ability to pick up an extra shift, drive rideshare on weekends, find part-time income, or ask for overtime, retirees often do not have that option. Their income is fixed, locked in when they retired or when they started receiving benefits. Their budget is already trimmed after years of adjusting and cutting. There is not much left to cut without sacrificing necessities, without making choices no one should have to make. I have seen this up close so many times over the past decade, and each time it breaks my heart a little. A widow stretching her blood pressure medication because she is worried the refill will hit before the next deposit arrives, and there won't be enough money to cover both the medication and food. A couple deciding which bill to pay today and which one can wait until next week, juggling due dates like a complex puzzle where one wrong move creates a cascade of late fees and problems. Seniors quietly skipping outings with grandchildren or turning down visits simply because the gas to drive there feels like a luxury they can't justify. People eating less, heating their homes less, doing without things that would improve their quality of life simply because the numbers don't work anymore. None of that shows up in campaign speeches or economic reports, but it shows up plainly in the data when you look for it, when you ask the right questions, and listen honestly to the answers. And eventually, even the most technical analysts, the people who normally just look at spreadsheets and models, cannot ignore it. The human reality breaks through the numbers, and that is what shifted. Instead of simply asking who qualifies based on income brackets and eligibility formulas, decision-makers began asking a different question, a more humane question. Who has the least room to recover if we wait? Who will be hurt most by delays? Who needs this help soonest? And when that question changed, when the framework shifted from pure eligibility to prioritizing vulnerability, priorities changed with it. Not to reward one group over another, not to play political favorites, but to recognize vulnerability, to recognize that retirement for many people is not a season of comfort and leisure. It is a balancing act, a constant calculation, a daily navigation of limited resources stretched to cover unlimited needs. So, the review process was rebuilt to better reflect real life, to match the system's priorities with the actual financial pressure people face. Seniors, especially those depending largely on federal benefits like Social Security, SSI, or disability payments, are no longer quietly standing at the back of the line by default. They are being seen earlier, evaluated sooner, and considered with more care and attention. That does not guarantee instant results. It does not guarantee uniform timing across all beneficiaries. But it does mean someone finally acknowledged that financial pressure in retirement feels different from financial pressure when you're working, and that it deserves a different level of attention, a different priority in how resources are distributed. So if you are listening right now and thinking, at least someone finally understands what we're going through, I want you to know that feeling is valid. This is not about promising the world or guaranteeing outcomes. It is about recognizing the weight you have been quietly carrying and making sure the system stops pretending it is not there, stops pretending that retirees on fixed incomes can just adjust like everyone else. As Treasury reshaped the program over recent weeks, as they looked at models and data and real-world feedback, they did not simply tack seniors onto the end of an existing list as an afterthought. They rebuilt the review process itself from the ground up, and they did it in a way designed to move those with the least flexibility closer to the front of the queue. Instead of treating every household exactly the same, applying the same timeline and process regardless of circumstances, they created what I like to think of as priority lanes, not to complicate the system for the sake of complexity, and not to play favorites based on politics, but to better match real financial pressure with review timing to make sure the people who need help soonest are the ones getting through the process first. In the original setup, the assumption driving the design was that working households would feel the fastest shock from tariffs because they're buying imported goods and seeing immediate price increases, so they received earlier attention in the planning process. But the new reports, the ones that came in over recent weeks and finally landed on the right desks, painted a very different picture. Seniors, especially low-income seniors whose entire household budget comes from a monthly benefit check that barely moves, were actually being squeezed sooner and harder than expected. They were hitting financial walls faster because they had no cushion to begin with, no extra income to fall back on when prices rose. So the model shifted to reflect that reality. In simple terms, here is how that shift works in practice. There is a first lane, what internal documents call the priority lane, designed specifically for people who have the least purchasing power and the smallest financial cushion to absorb shocks. Many of the seniors who live mainly on Social Security, supplemental security income, or disability benefits fall naturally into this category simply based on their income level and circumstances. These files tend to move through review faster, not because anyone labeled them more deserving on moral grounds, but because the system now recognizes, based on data and analysis, that a $40 jump in groceries or a sudden medical bill can throw everything off balance very quickly when income does not move, when there's no extra to absorb the impact. Then there is a second lane for households that still qualify based on income and circumstances, but have slightly more room to manage expenses temporarily. They have some savings, some flexibility, some ability to adjust in the short term. Their reviews continue steadily, just at a pace that reflects their slightly less urgent situation. And finally, there is a third lane for situations that require more verification, cases involving higher incomes that still technically qualify, or mismatched records that need additional review to ensure accuracy. This isn't punishment or deprioritization. It's just practical sequencing based on need and urgency. One of the quiet advantages seniors have in this system, something that actually works in their favor, even though it might not seem like it, is stability. Many of you have had the same direct deposit account for years, even decades, the same benefit source month after month, the same monthly pattern that rarely changes except for annual COLA adjustments. That means your information often matches government records cleanly because nothing has changed recently. When the data lines up across systems, when Social Security records match, IRS records match banking information, the review moves faster because there is less detective work to do, fewer questions to answer, fewer verifications required. The system can process you efficiently, not because you're being rushed, but because everything is straightforward. But I want to be very honest about something, because Honesty builds trust, and trust is more important than false comfort. Being in a priority lane does not mean the payment appears overnight like magic. Priority simply means earlier attention, faster processing, being moved to the front of the queue. It does not mean instant results without any waiting at all. There may still be pauses while records are verified. There may still be corrections if something doesn't match perfectly. There may still be questions along the way that need to be answered. And that is perfectly normal, perfectly reasonable. The system is handling millions of people and billions of dollars. Some caution and verification is appropriate and actually protects you from errors and fraud. Now, naturally, one of the biggest questions rising up across living rooms and kitchen tables right now is simple and completely understandable. Where do I fit in this picture? Am I one of the people being prioritized? Will I be in that first wave, or will I be waiting longer? And that is such a fair question to ask because your financial security depends on understanding what to expect. From what the internal guidance suggests, from what Treasury documents indicate about priorities and sequencing, the earliest focus leans heavily towards seniors whose household income is built primarily around federal benefits. That includes people receiving Social Security retirement benefits as their main source of income. It includes people on supplemental security income because they have limited resources and income. It includes people receiving disability benefits through SSDI because they can no longer work. And it includes survivor benefits for widows and widowers whose household income dropped significantly when their spouse passed away. These are households where nearly every dollar already has a job assigned to it before it even arrives. Medication that can't be skipped, food that's already been cut to basics, utilities that can't be turned off, transportation to medical appointments, and where unexpected increases do not just squeeze the budget or create temporary inconvenience, they erase what little breathing room was left, forcing impossible choices between necessities. Income ranges appear to play a significant role in priority determination, but again, not in a way designed to judge or rank people's worth, only to identify vulnerability and urgent need. Many of the most financially stressed seniors fall under roughly $30,000 per year in total household income. Within that group, those receiving less than about $1,300 per month, around $15,600 annually, were flagged as especially stretched, living in a zone where there's almost no margin for error. And when monthly income dips closer to $1,100 or below, less than $13,200 per year, the system views that level as highly sensitive, not as a label or judgment, but as a recognition that life at that income number leaves almost no margin at all. You're surviving month to month, sometimes week to week, and any disruption can become a crisis very quickly. But here is something important many people miss when they focus only on income numbers. It is not only about income in isolation. Treasury also began weighing stability, meaning whether your income can grow or change, whether you have any ability to adjust if costs rise. Seniors by nature do not usually have the same ability working families do to add shifts, negotiate salary increases, or find new work quickly when expenses jump. A fixed benefit is a blessing in predictability, knowing exactly what's coming and when, but it is limiting when prices jump because you can't just go ask your boss for a raise. Your income is what it is, and that difference, that lack of flexibility, matters now in ways it didn't before. The model finally reflects that reality, acknowledging that fixed income creates a different kind of vulnerability than variable income does. Another quiet factor that can help move your case through faster is something internal documents call Fast Verify. Many seniors fall into this category simply because their identity details, benefit records, and income information already live inside federal systems and rarely change. Social Security knows who you are. The IRS has your information. Your banking details haven't changed in years. When everything is already on file and consistent across systems, there is less paperwork required, less back and forth between agencies, and fewer obstacles to slow things down. That does not guarantee timing or outcomes, but it can smooth the road significantly, removing friction points that might delay others. Still, I want to say this with compassion and complete honesty because managing expectations appropriately is more kind than false hope. Being closer to the front does not mean everyone moves at the same speed or arrives at the same time. Two seniors may have similar incomes, similar circumstances, similar benefit sources, and still experience different processing times. Why? Because of something as simple as an address change that hasn't fully updated across systems, a bank account that was closed and reopened, an old record from years ago that needs correction, a name that changed due to marriage or divorce that created a mismatch in records. If that happens, if your case takes longer than someone else's, it is not a punishment or sign that something is wrong. It is just the system trying to make sure everything is accurate before money moves. So, as we talk through all of this, as you absorb this information and think about what it means for you, remember the fundamental truth behind the shift. It was not about creating winners and losers. It was not about political calculations or vote-seeking. It was about finally acknowledging vulnerability in a meaningful way and designing a review process that sees seniors not as numbers in a database, but as people whose financial stability deserves careful thought and respect. And that recognition, even if it arrives quietly without fanfare or celebration, is meaningful. Being seen matters. Being understood matters. And that shift, however quiet, represents progress. One of the most comforting pieces of this entire update, something that brings me genuine relief when I explain it to seniors, is something many people do not realize at first. For most seniors, there is nothing special you need to rush out and apply for. There is no secret website you need to find before spots run out. There is no early sign-up list you need to get on before some deadline, and there is certainly no limited spot enrollment where only the first people who apply get approved. The strength of this program, what makes it actually workable at this scale, is that it leans heavily on information the government already has in its systems. Social Security records that are updated regularly, IRS files from your tax returns, benefit databases that track monthly payments. That means eligibility reviews are happening quietly in the background without requiring seniors to chase paperwork, fill out complex forms, or navigate confusing application processes. And honestly, I am grateful for that design choice. Over the years, I have seen how easily new programs create confusion, mistakes, and anxiety when they require people to actively apply. Seniors miss deadlines they didn't know existed. They fill out forms incorrectly because instructions are unclear. They get overwhelmed by the process and give up, leaving money on the table. This program was intentionally designed to avoid that by working with existing data. Now, there are a few situations where you might see a request to confirm or update something, and these are completely normal. Nothing to worry about. If you have moved recently and your address in one system doesn't match another, the system might ask you to verify which is current. If you changed banks or closed an account, you might need to update direct deposit information. If your records do not match exactly across different systems, perhaps because of a name change or a data entry error years ago, the government may ask you to verify which information is correct. But here is the key, the critical thing you need to know to protect yourself. Any legitimate request will show up only in secure official portals, like your IRS online account or your My Social Security account. These are the official government websites where you log in with credentials you created, protected by security questions and verification processes, not through random emails that appear in your inbox from addresses you don't recognize, not through text messages that show up out of nowhere claiming to be from the Treasury or Social Security, and definitely not from someone calling you on the phone demanding information urgently or threatening consequences if you don't comply immediately. If anyone reaches out asking for your full Social Security number, your banking password, gift cards to verify your identity, or an activation fee to release your payment, that is not the government. That is a scam, a criminal trying to steal from you by exploiting the confusion around this program. Hang up immediately. Pause. Ask someone you trust before doing anything. You deserve protection, not pressure. The best step you can take right now is simple, calm, and doesn't require rushing. When you have time, when you're feeling settled and not stressed, Log into your official portals, the ones you already have accounts with, or can create securely through official government websites. Make sure your mailing address is current and correct. Make sure your direct deposit information reflects the account you actually use now, not one you closed 3 years ago. Check for typos in your name or address. Make sure everything matches your current reality. Small inaccuracies, things that seem minor, are often the reason payments get delayed or rerouted to wrong addresses. Updating now, doing it calmly without stress or rushing, can save weeks of waiting and confusion later when you're wondering why your payment hasn't arrived. Beyond that, there is nothing extra to chase. No race, no competition, no deadline creating artificial urgency. Just awareness and patience, staying informed without obsessing, checking occasionally without letting it consume your peace. And naturally, the question I hear most often, sometimes whispered with hope, sometimes asked with worry, is when will the money actually arrive? I appreciate that question deeply because it comes from a place of hope mixed with uncertainty, of wanting to plan but not wanting to be disappointed. But the honest answer, the one that serves you better than false promises, requires patience. What happened in the early morning hours was not a button being pressed to instantly send out checks to millions of people. It was the approval that allows the system to move forward from planning into execution, from theoretical to practical. Think of it like a long puzzle being assembled piece by piece. First, the eligibility models finish running, processing millions of records to determine who qualifies under the criteria. Then the system matches records across multiple databases to ensure accuracy and catch errors before money moves. After that, payment methods, whether direct deposit or mail checks, are confirmed and verified to make sure money will reach the right place. Only when those steps align, only when everything has been checked and double-checked, does the payment process actually begin. That means in many cases you may notice movement before you ever see money, things like notifications in your official portals, confirmation messages indicating your case is being processed, status updates showing progress. That is normal. Progress often shows up as quiet digital footsteps long before it arrives in your bank account. Some seniors may see updates earlier simply because their records are cleaner, simpler, and easier to verify. Others may take longer because of something small that needs attention. An old address, a closed account, a name change, a mismatch in records that requires manual review. Delays do not necessarily mean denial. They usually just mean the system is being cautious, which frankly, when money is involved, caution is a good thing. I know waiting can feel heavy, especially when budgets already feel stretched thin, when you're counting days until the next deposit, when unexpected expenses loom. But I want you to remember something important, something true even when it's hard to hold on to. Slow movement does not mean no movement. Often, the most meaningful financial changes happen quietly, long before they are visible on the surface. What matters most right now is staying informed without obsessing, watching patiently without letting worry steal your peace, and refusing to let anxiety about timing rob you of the life you're living today. In the meantime, in this space between approval and arrival, remember you have carried bigger challenges than this. You have weathered harder seasons than waiting, and you do not have to carry this one with fear or panic. Steady, informed patience is enough. Another question that has been coming up again and again, and I completely understand why it creates anxiety, is whether receiving this rebate could somehow hurt your regular benefits. Could it reduce your Social Security check? Could it trigger a review of your eligibility? Could it create problems you don't currently have? And I want to walk through that slowly because peace of mind matters here, because fear can be more damaging than facts. The $2,000 rebate is not considered wages or employment income. It is not treated as earned income like a paycheck. It is not designed like a benefit adjustment that replaces or modifies something you already receive. It is categorized as a rebate connected to tariff revenue, which places it outside of the normal formulas used to calculate Social Security, supplemental security income, or disability programs. In plain language that matters for your peace of mind, it should not reduce your Social Security check. It should not trigger a sudden review of your benefits just because you received it. It should not interfere with cost of living increases you're entitled to, and it is not intended to reopen your file or create scrutiny simply because money arrived. For seniors on supplemental security income, I know the worry feels even heavier because SSI has strict limits, and sometimes even a small financial change can feel risky. The guidance makes it clear that the rebate itself is not counted as typical ongoing income for those calculations. However, and I always believe in being realistic and honest with you, even about complications, if a large amount sits untouched in an account for a long period, it can begin to matter in certain asset-based evaluations that SSI uses. That is why the quiet, practical advice being shared among those who understand the system makes so much sense. Use the relief thoughtfully when it arrives. Apply it toward essentials that improve your life or reduce financial pressure. Keep your life stable, rather than letting the money create anxiety by sitting in an account creating questions. Food, utilities, medical costs, overdue bills, repairs that have been postponed. These are the kinds of things the program was meant to support. And something else I want you to know, because fear spreads fast online and I want to counter it with truth, receiving this rebate does not put a target on your back for audits or investigations. It does not automatically invite IRS scrutiny. The eligibility review happens before the payment ever reaches you. Once you are approved and the money arrives, the intention is to help reduce pressure, not create new problems or complications. Sometimes clarity itself is the greatest gift we can offer each other in uncertain times. And I want you to feel that clarity here, that sense of understanding what's real versus what's feared. So then the natural question becomes, what should I actually be doing right now? What actions make sense? And the answer, thankfully, is far simpler than many people expect or fear. The most important thing you can do, the action that matters most, is make sure your information is accurate across systems. If you have an IRS online account or a My Social Security account, take a few minutes when you are comfortable, when you're not stressed or rushed, and log in. Look at your mailing address in the system. Look at your direct deposit information. Make sure everything matches your current details, your current reality. A closed bank account from years ago still listed in the system. An old address from before you moved. A small typo in your name or account number. These small things can slow processing down more than anything else, creating delays that have nothing to do with eligibility and everything to do with mismatched data. Beyond that, there is no race to join. There is no extra form hiding somewhere that you need to find. There is no deadline that requires panic or urgent action today. Check your portals occasionally when you think of it, not obsessively every hour. Stay aware of your status without letting it dominate your thoughts. And do not let this consume your peace or steal your ability to enjoy today. And please, I cannot emphasize this enough. Stay alert to anyone who tries to take advantage of this situation through scams. No legitimate agency will call demanding your full Social Security number over the phone. No government representative will ask for your banking login or password. No official program requires gift cards or fees to unlock your payment. No real process involves sending money to receive money. If someone pressures you with urgent demands, threatens you with consequences if you don't comply immediately, or says they can get you approved faster for money if you just provide some information or pay a small fee, that is not the government. That is a scam designed to steal from you, and you deserve to be protected from it. One of the healthiest things you can do right now is simply prepare thoughtfully and calmly. Ask yourself, if this relief arrives as planned, what will help me breathe easier? What would reduce pressure in my life? What have I been postponing that this could finally address? For many seniors, that means catching up on bills that have been juggled month to month, filling prescriptions without the stress of choosing between medication and food, fixing something at home that has been put off because there wasn't money for it, paying down a little debt that creates monthly pressure, or simply stabilizing the basics so each month does not feel like a precarious balancing act. When money has a purpose, when you know what it's for and how it will help, it creates calm. When it sits with fear and uncertainty swirling around it, when you're not sure what to do or whether it's real, it creates anxiety. My hope is that understanding creates purpose, and purpose creates calm. And most importantly, give yourself permission to exhale. Give yourself permission to hope without demanding certainty. Give yourself permission to prepare without panicking. This process may feel slow, it may feel quiet, but slow progress is still progress. Staying steady, informed, and patient matters more than anything else right now. You have lived through enough financial storms, enough uncertain seasons to know that clarity, not panic, is what carries us through. That preparation, not fear, is what protects us. And that patience, even when it's hard, is often the wisest response to situations we cannot control. As we come a little closer to the heart of this conversation, as we move from the mechanics of policy toward the meaning behind it, I want to slow down with you for a moment, because this is not only about numbers on spreadsheets, eligibility charts in databases, or government systems processing files. It is also about what so many seniors have quietly carried for years without complaint, without demanding attention, without feeling entitled to acknowledgement. Rising prices have a way of creeping into everyday life in ways that outsiders, people not living on fixed incomes, do not always see or understand. It is choosing the generic brand when the name brand used to be fine and affordable. It is turning the thermostat down a little lower than feels comfortable because you're worried about the utility bill. It is spacing out doctor appointments or delaying necessary care because co-pays add up faster than income allows. It is stretching things that really should not be stretched, making chicken last an extra meal, skipping doses of medication to make the bottle last longer, putting off car maintenance until something breaks rather than doing preventive care. And often, it is doing all of that silently, privately, without telling your children because you do not want to worry them and you do not want to feel like a burden. I have heard that tone in voices across kitchen tables and phone calls countless times. That mixture of strength and quiet exhaustion, that determination to keep going, mixed with weariness from the constant effort it requires. That is why this shift in priorities matters, why this recognition feels meaningful, even if the dollar amount doesn't solve everything. Not because $2,000 solves everything. It does not. It will not transform your retirement or eliminate all financial pressure, but it represents acknowledgement, a simple recognition that retirement should not feel like a constant fight to keep up, that the people who worked hard, raised families, paid taxes, and built the communities around us deserve dignity and breathing room, not just survival. When policymakers finally looked past the spreadsheets and economic models and saw the lived reality of fixed income life, when they listened to the data that showed real people making impossible choices, something softened. Something shifted from pure calculation to recognition of human need. And even though it arrived without speeches or spotlights, without political theater or campaign promises, that recognition still carries meaning. If you felt unseen in your struggles, if you have ever wondered whether anyone notices the sacrifices you make month after month, whether anyone understands that you're not complaining but simply trying to survive in an economy that changed faster than your income could adjust, I want you to know you are not invisible. Your reality is not imagined. You are not complaining when you acknowledge that things are harder than they should be. You are navigating a financial world that changed faster than your income did, where costs rose dramatically while fixed benefits barely moved. And that is not your failure. That is not poor planning or insufficient savings or any personal shortcoming. That is the landscape changing around you while you stood on solid ground that suddenly didn't feel so solid anymore. My hope, every time I sit down to share conversations like this, every time I try to translate policy into plain language and bureaucracy into human terms, is to help you feel steadier, more informed, and less alone as things continue to unfold. To give you clarity without hype, understanding without fear, hope without false promises. And as we gently move toward closing our time together today, I want to leave you with something simple and grounding. If this discussion helped you feel even a little more confident, even slightly more prepared, even marginally less anxious about what's coming, I am truly grateful. That is why I do this work, not to scare you with worst-case scenarios, not to promise miracles that won't materialize, but to walk beside you with clarity and calm, treating you with the respect and dignity you deserve. And if you found peace here, If this conversation gave you useful information or eased your mind, there's a good chance another senior out there, someone in your life or your community, could use the same reassurance. If you feel comfortable liking or sharing this information, helps more people find clarity without fear, helps more seniors understand what's real versus what's rumor. And that matters more than algorithms or view counts or numbers on a screen. It matters because real people need real information. I would also love to hear from you because your wisdom, your experience, your perspective truly matters and can help others walking similar paths. What is one money habit, lesson, or truth you wish you had learned sooner? Maybe it is about saving differently or starting earlier. Maybe it is about not helping everyone else at the expense of yourself, about setting boundaries around your own financial security. Maybe it is about asking questions earlier instead of feeling embarrassed or assuming everyone else understands things you don't. Whatever it is, whatever wisdom you've gained through your own journey, sharing it may help someone who is walking the road right behind you, someone who feels the same worry you once felt, someone who thinks they're alone in their struggle. Your experience is not just a personal story. It is guidance. It is wisdom earned through living, and it matters. And as always, I will continue watching this situation carefully, monitoring developments, reading updates from Treasury and other official sources, and translating them into clear language so you never feel lost in the noise. Never feel confused by jargon or overwhelmed by bureaucracy. Whenever there is real meaningful movement, whenever something changes that affects your situation, I will be right here calmly breaking things down step by step with honesty and care. Until then, in this space between approval and implementation, between confirmation and arrival, take a breath, stay patient with the process, stay informed without obsessing, and remember, you deserve stability, respect, and peace in this season of your life. You have earned it through decades of work, contribution, and perseverance. And while the system doesn't always move as fast as we'd like, this shift represents progress toward finally recognizing that